Hello, my name is Dan Dodds. I'm the principal attorney at the Dodds Law Firm in Surprise, Arizona. Reluctantly, I want to talk about and ask the question, are you a victim of domestic violence? And if you are, what should you do about it? Well, let's talk quickly, what constitutes domestic violence? And I'll state this in layman's terms, not legal terms, but it's any act of abuse committed against a family member or a household member, someone that's staying in that home, is domestic violence. Now, there's degrees, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean if it's just a small one, it's not domestic violence. The other thing about domestic violence is you don't want to underestimate how negative that is. Not only is it ethically and morally wrong, it can get you arrested and prosecuted for committing a crime, such as assault and battery or attempted murder. You pick it out. It can be associated with at least 30 crimes. So it's something that people should avoid, but sadly don't. What do you mean? Is it more prevalent than I think? I don't know anybody that's got domestic violence going on. Well, that doesn't mean that it isn't happening. Here's a scary statistic. In the United States today, there are 20 acts of domestic violence reported every minute of the day. Think about that. That is a lot of violence going on in residencies. So, what is domestic violence? Well, there's essentially, all of us think about physical violence. Hitting somebody, slapping my husband, pushing the wife into the refrigerator, grabbing a child by the hair and shaking him and telling him, you do what I say or I'll do something to you. That's physical violence. Sexual violence is domestic violence as well. If the wife says, I don't want to have sex, don't do it. If your husband says, I don't want you touching me today, don't do it. It will get you in a lot of trouble because you can commit domestic violence even though you're married with the man or the woman, or you're significant emotionally and physically involved with each other, but you're not married. Just remember, no means no. Not in 10 minutes, not when you're finished, not when you feel like it. The moment you hear the word no, you better stop. There can be emotional domestic violence where I threaten you with such severe things, or I will kill your parents. I will shoot your aunt that you love dearly. That's emotional domestic violence. It can also be financial domestic violence in certain situations. Well, what would that be? I take your name off all the bank accounts, so you and I remove them. You don't even know where I'm putting my paycheck. And I'm just going to give you an allowance every week. I'm going to threaten to take all your credit cards away. Or I do take all your credit cards away. So, again, these are all factual driven factors, but domestic violence can occur in physical assaults, sexual, emotional, and financial circumstances exist that would put the other person in fear or harm them in some way. So, let's talk about if you're in one of those unlucky households where there's domestic violence occurring, going both ways perhaps. Let's talk about what a person should do. Well, the first thing you should do is retreat from the abuser. Get yourself out of the room. Take yourself out of the house. Get out of the pool or the jacuzzi or the hot tub. Retreat from what's occurring. Where you retreat to, I guess you're going to have to make that decision. It could be into your room and you lock it. it could be to a neighbor's home, it could be to your car, it could be driving away, but retreat. Get yourself out of that event. Second, tell someone about it. In this stage, I'll use what I see many times wives tell me. Well, it's been going on for years. Yeah, he hurt me, but I don't think he really meant to. How frequent? Oh, I don't know. He's probably done it 20 times over 7 years. But they never tell anybody. So it's her word against his word. So tell someone. Tell your best girlfriend. Tell your next door neighbor. Tell someone in your church that we could use as a witness on a stand if you're in a family law dispute, because acts of domestic violence, whether reported or not, have a negative effect on parenting. Your husband, if they're the abuser, isn't going to particularly like what a court will do if there's been frequent, meaningful, and reoccurring domestic violence. So we need some knowledge, and typically telling someone that's close to you is the best course of action. But I also tell my clients, keep a written record and put it somewhere that's safe that you could retrieve it. So if domestic violence breaks out, you write down the date, what the nature of the violence was, and what you did or didn't do to react to that violence. It could be, well, I went to bed and locked the guest room door so I could be by myself that night and be safe. Tell someone, keep a written record. Now, if you are alarmed that you're being threatened and you really believe that the person might do what they're threatening to do, or they've already done it, call the police. Dial 911. They will send officers ASAP to your residence, and they're going to see and speak to both parties. In Arizona, typically, if there's been violent domestic violence, and the officers believe that there's probable cause that the husband did slap the wife because she's got a cut on her face, or her eye is black and swelling, someone's going to jail. If they believe there's probable cause that domestic violence has occurred, other people saying, yeah, he was doing this or that, they're going to arrest them. So it's a serious criminal crime that can not only land you in trouble with the law and perhaps some incarceration or fines or forced counseling, it can negatively affect, if there's a divorce, what the parenting plan is going to look like, how much time the abuser is going to get. Is it supervised or unsupervised parenting? So it's an important act that you should take precautions to avoid and keep a record of. The last thing I want to suggest you is develop a safety plan. Now, you don't have to write it down, but for instance, if I'm the mother and I have young children, I'm going to tell my children, if you hear mommy say some word just out of the blue, or use some phrase such as, not I hate you, but something that would be unique, like, my mother will not be happy with you, or a single word. That's your trigger word. That alerts everybody that doesn't know that word, doesn't let them know anything, but it lets people who hear that word know it's time to get out. I've said, when you hear that, children, you go out the door and you go to the neighbor's house. Or mama, who's your grandmother, if you hear that word, you get out of this house. Prepare a go bag. What in the world is a go bag? It's not a huge bag, but it's a bag you would keep somewhere in the garage or in a compartment in your vehicle or under a front seat or back seat that would have these kinds of items in it. Put some cash Have a credit card sitting in there so that if you had to exit the scene and didn't have time to grab your purse, you've got some cash and a credit card you could use to get where you need to get with gasoline or to put you up in a hotel that evening. Put a spare car key in there. Maybe you keep the spare car keys in the very room you're fighting in. You don't want that. Keep a spare car key in that bag. And I always recommend keep at least one document that has your face on it that would establish in your name who you are. It could be an old passport. It could be you work somewhere and you have to wear a name tag and it says Dodds Law Firm, has your face on it and has your name. Keep that in the bag. Now maybe, and it can be an old one. It doesn't have to be not 20 years old, but a recent one, then they've given you a new one. Something that can prove who you are. But again, I want to go full circle and end with this. If it's physical violence and you're threatened where you think something serious could happen to you or your children or someone else in that home, call the police. That is your best course of action if you truly have been physically hit or you believe that knife that he's threatening me with, he might well cut me up. Don't wait till he cuts you up. Call the police. I hope this information you never need. But if you do, I hope what I've told you today will serve you well.